Hi, and thanks for logging on to the Daily DVAR Halacha. And here's a brand new halacha for you, and it's for Tuesday, March 20th, fourth day of Nissan. I wanted to take one day to just explain some misconceptions about Sviras HaOmer, the counting of Omer. You will hear people mistakenly say things like, oh, Sviras HaOmer is this sad period that God put in the calendar where we are all sad, and that's why we count. And so that's not all accurate at all. I want to take you back to the beginning of what Sfiras HaOmer really is and was. When it started, God announced to the Jews when they got the Torah that there would be a mitzvah of counting the Omer. Now, what is the Omer? It really means that a special sacrifice was brought on the second day of Pesach, and it was made out of barley, and it had one measure that was called Omer. And then God said, bring that sacrifice of barley on the second day of Pesach, and then count 49 days, and the 50th will be Pesach. Will be Shavuos, sorry. And that's it, okay? That's the counting of Omer. Nothing to do with Rabbi Akiva's students. Okay, so let's just get that step straight. There was just a mitzvah that God told us, bring a carbon of a barley measure, that's the Omer, the measure of barley, bring it on the second day of Pesach, count 49 days, and the 50th will be Shavuos. Okay, then it seems that God intended that now I'm going to explain where the sadness comes in and later where the Rabbi Akiva thing came in, but that's what the count of Omer really was at its core. Then, it seems that God intended that period to be a period of great growth. The Omer of barley is considered animal food, and that lowly sacrifice is kind of indicative that God considers us like at our bare beginnings when we just get out of Egypt. We had just become a nation, and then we count upwards until the 50th day when we're finally eligible to get the Torah. Now, hundreds and hundreds of years later, a sad event occurred, and that's why everybody, of course, associates Rabbi Akiva and his students with the counting of Omer. But I just want you to be clear that they were two separate things. First, there was a mitzvah called bring the Omer sacrifice and then count. And then hundreds of years later, the students of Rabbi Akiva, God was unhappy with them because they weren't honoring each other as God expected them to. And perhaps he wanted it to happen during this time of the year because this is already speculation, but it is a growth period when he expects us to be ascending in greatness, and he was upset with the students of Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says because they didn't honor each other properly, and so they died for 33 days during this time of 49 days of counting. And yes, then it became marked as a sad time, and that's why you will hear laws about sadness during the counting of Omer. So I've given you the skeletal view. Maybe on subsequent days I'll try and give you more details about what exactly happened and what exactly are the laws, but I wanted you to know, as many people mix them together, that they were two distinct things. First, there was a mitzvah called Count Omer, count 49 days from that little sacrifice that was brought on the second day of Pesach. And God made that time as kind of a growth time as we ascend to the holiday of Shavuos. And then simultaneous to that, hundreds of years later, that became the exact time, 33 days within those 49, when the students of Rabbi Akiva died. And so then it became marked as a sad period in honor of the great students of Rabbi Akiva that we lost. Maybe you feel like you kind of knew that, but most people, when you ask them what's Sfiras Omer, they say, oh, it's the sad time of the year when we count a bunch of days when Rabbi Akiva's students died. So that's a little bit inaccurate. First, there was a mitzvah of counting Omer. Then, hundreds of years later, Rabbi Akiva's students died during that time. And so we mark that sadness during the counting of the 49 days after the sacrifice of Omer. Okay, I hope that made sense. Thanks for logging on. Log on again tomorrow for more. Bye-bye.